Everybody Googles everything, especially potential customers or employers, and a business or personal online reputation can make or break you. If negative search results or reviews are impacting you, Webamax is here to help. Our proven process restores your online reputation quickly and effectively, and it matters. Don't let negative results control your narrative. Visit GoWebamax.com and fill out a brief confidential form to see how we can help. Remember, if you aren't paying attention to your online reputation, someone else is. GoWebamax.com.
We took it all. We brought them to our land. An endless night, ember hot and icy cold. The rage of the earth. We made this curse. Carved it in the blood on our backs. We did not see. We could not, but she did. And in the end...
What will I become?
Senua's Saga. Hellblade 2.
Play it now with Game Pass.
Now's the time to save 30% on wedding jewelry, only on BlueNile.com. Make sure your wedding ring is the one, with your pick of diamond and lab-grown diamond bands, all hand-finished and graded for excellence. Or surprise her with something blue she'll love for life, like a stunning pair of sapphire earrings. Blue Nile's jewelry experts are available 24/7 to help, from fit questions to style advice. Right now, get up to 30% off at BlueNile.com. BlueNile.com.
With threats to our nation waiting around every corner, adaptability is more important than ever. When conditions change without notice, quick strategic thinking is crucial. And with obstacles consistently impending, determination is essential in overcoming them. It's this willingness, decisiveness, and resilience that sets Marines apart. With our fighting spirit, we don't just fight battles, we win them. Marines are the constant our nation counts on to fight the unknown. And through adaptable problem solving, we do just that. Learn more at Marines.com.
Hey everybody, it's Weird Islanders, the podcast, back once again. My name is Dan. That is Mike. How are you this evening, Mike?
I'm doing pretty good. We are recording this before the night before Game 5, so enjoying the day off before that against the Hurricanes, and really excited to talk with our guest and about a player who, I think one of the themes of Weird Islanders is the circumstances in which a player ends up on Long Island. Sometimes, or there could be another theme where it's the circumstances where they leave Long Island. For this player, he hits the two-step where he was included in not one but two of the most infamous trades in Islanders history. He came in one, and then he left in another. I am hard pressed to think of another player that could stake a claim to that in NHL history. And I've been racking my brain for weeks. I'm like, since we found out we were doing this player, like what other player was involved in two trades that were universally panned, where he was the one where he came in one and then left in another in such a short time. There isn't one. I'm sure somebody listening will be able to help point me out to one. But as I've been thinking, I cannot think of another player who was involved in anything like this. This is a whirlwind of ineptitude like you've never seen.
Seriously. And even if we do find somebody who did come in a trade like that and left in a trade like that, I don't think it was within a calendar year, which is pretty much what this guy did after one full season as an Islander. So, this is going to be a fun one. This is definitely one that people have been looking forward to, I think. And it was a great pick by our great guest. He is one of the leaders of Skurnik Wines and Spirits and the founder of the Pinot Project, which you guys hear me talk about all the time. He is David Skurnik. David, how are you?
Hey, guys. I'm doing well. How are you?
We are very well. It's great to talk to you again. Great to have met you at our live event at Offside NYC. A little bit more on that at the very end of this episode. It's great to have you on, and this is a great pick, and we're going to get to him in a minute. But I want to talk to you first about the business. So Skurnik Wines is a family business. Your uncle started it. Your dad joined him. My question to you is being an Islanders fan a family business as well? Or are you the only Islanders fan in your office the same way that a lot of other Islanders fans are usually the only one in their offices?
I would say it's a bit of a family business in the sense that when I was a kid, I grew up on Long Island. The business started in Syosset. I used to drive past Iceworks every day from the train when I would commute out from the city. And growing up on Long Island, the Islanders were the team. And when I was a kid, I was 10 years old. I'd have my birthday parties at Islander games. But I don't think my dad wasn't a huge fan. He was just, he liked that I liked it, and he took me to games and stuff like that. I've definitely surpassed the family in terms of the fandom and the nerddom of Islanders.
Right.
But I am trying to pass it on to my kids, which is nice.
Nice. Yeah. That sounds like me too. Like my dad used to take me, but he didn't go because he was like some kind of wild man. Like he went because somebody at the job gave him tickets, and he had a son, and he lived on the island and nobody else did. So we went, but it works. And then, unfortunately my wife and daughter have caught the disease for me. But no, that's great. And like you said, it's a Long Island based business, and you guys have been around, 40 years basically at this point, almost 50 years actually. And for the Pinot project, which is sort of a consortium that you've started, as I say all the time on our ad read, that is sold at UBS Arena. So, I mean, how did that come about? Did you approach them? Did the team approach you? I mean, how did it come so that Pinot Project wines are sold at UBS?
Well, originally, unfortunately, sadly to say, we first started selling the Pinot Project at the Garden, which
that's all right. That's all right.
Business is business.
Right.
They were buying some of our other wines, and we saw a way to get the Pinot Project in front of more people. And the Knicks, fine. Concerts was really the focus. The Rangers, unfortunately, fans get to drink our wine at those games too. But started at MSG, and then when UBS is being built, actually one of our contacts at the Garden left to go work at UBS, and we gave them a call and said, "Hey, let's have Pinot Project at UBS Arena also." And that was obviously much more exciting for me.
Sure.
They actually brought us in to this office in Midtown before the arena was even built, and they gave us the whole pitch because they wanted. It's a market. We do marketing at the arena. We have the cans of wine in the arena, and so they wanted the business from us because they saw how successful it was at MSG. And so, as a big Islanders fan, I got to go in to this office where they, wined and dined us a little bit and showed us this promo video of UBS Arena that they were really excited about, which got me really excited. And I had to really hold, the business hat on to say, I cannot accept any, Islanders based bribes to get this because they're like, we'll give you tickets, we'll get you in. I was like, no, I have to make the right business decision. But ultimately, it's great to have the cans in the arena as an Islander fan and find ways to connect our brands with the fans, of our biggest market.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. And as I've said many times too, from personal experience, I can tell you that the Pinot Project wine is fantastic. Like, I'm not a big wine drinker, but whenever I've had it, it's delicious. And most importantly, whenever we bring it to a party, people are always like, "Oh, this is really good. What is this?" And I'm like, "It's the Pinot Project. This is started by a group of people out on the island, and one of them is an Islanders fan who listens to my podcast. So I get to brag about your wine and also brag about my podcast. So it works.
Love that. And I think the conversation about wine has kind of in some ways gone off the rails, and people, either it's really big brands that are everywhere and don't taste that great, or it's gone like too far to the niche. And I think that with the Pinot Project, we want to make wine that's affordable and that's delicious, and that's it. And I think it doesn't have to be so serious. I think that wine can just taste great, and you can buy a bottle and drink it and enjoy it with your friends, and buy another one and drink another one.
It's like being a hockey fan now, and the charts.
Yeah. Yeah, right. You got to know about the charts and graphs to be a hockey fan. You got to know about all the vineyards to be a wine fan, but you don't have to be, because you can just drink Pinot Project wine.
That's right.
I would love to talk to you about wine all day, because the concept of this is fascinating to me, and obviously it goes back many, many millennia. But we are here to talk about a legendary Weird Islander and a guy who went on to have an incredible career, but also this is easily one of the most unique and fascinating careers in recent NHL history. And it does include a brief but important stop on Long Island. And as Mike said, 2 of the worst trades in Islanders history. So without any further ado, David Skurnik, will you please reveal the subject of tonight's episode of Weird Islanders, the podcast?
Tonight's Weird Islander is Olli Jokinen.
That's right. Olli Jokinen. It is waffle time. We're going to talk about that GIF as well. And we're going to spend most of this time talking about this guy's 1 season as an Islander, and then probably about 5 minutes talking about the other 16 years of his career. Before we get into all that, reminder that we are on Patreon, patreon.com/IslandersAnxiety. Membership gets you ad-free episodes, bonus podcasts, written posts, and a whole lot more. So sign up, patreon.com/IslandersAnxiety. Okay, David. So we gave you the big list. You looked at it. You actually had a couple of extra days because wouldn't you know it, the Islanders made the playoffs. And so our original recording time got blown up, and you had a few more days to pick a name off of that massive list. And Olli Jokinen was the guy you picked. So what drew your eyes to Olli Jokinen on that big list of Weird Islanders?
Well, for one, I'm glad that we're recording this ahead of Game 5 and not after Game 4. We are still surviving 1 game at a time.
That's right.
But the reason I went for Jokinen, well, one of my first reasons was a little bit blown up when I went to do some research on him, because it's like, as a bald man, I appreciated all of the images of Olli Jokinen as a bald man. And then I saw his photos in Nashville at the end of his career with flowing locks. I was like, I don't know what's up with that. That's crazy.
That's his picture on Hockey Reference right now. I'm looking at long hair. It's crazy.
I can't understand.
Since he's entered into the coaching ranks too. I mean, he looks like a insane Scandinavian college professor, like long hair, long beard, kind of splinterish. I was shocked by this.
The real reason I picked Jokinen is because when I saw him on the list and I was thinking about him, and I said, oh yeah, they had him for a year. I know he was involved in 2 big trades, but then I thought about it more, and I could not believe that a player like Olli Jokinen had to be a throw-in with Roberto Luongo in order to get Mark Parrish and Oleg Kvasha. Usually when you're trading away a Luongo type player, you're getting the Jokinen in the deal, not also giving him. So it's not like he was some pop-up prospect that they got in the other trade, which we'll talk about, I'm sure. But he was the 3rd overall pick, pick 1 spot before Luongo, and somehow ended up on the Islanders. So, and then you have to give them both to get these 2 guys? I don't understand. It doesn't make any sense.
Well,
it makes sense.
I can and I can't, because the only way this makes sense is if you enter the mind of Mike Milbury, which is where this is all going to come back to. But before we get to that trade, let's talk about the trade that did bring him to Long Island. So as you mentioned, he was the 3rd overall pick by the LA Kings in 1997. This was the Joe Thornton year, and then Patrick Marleau. Joe Thornton went to the Bruins. Patrick Marleau went to the Sharks. 3rd was Olli Jokinen to the Kings, and 4th was Roberto Luongo to the Islanders. He was with the Kings for a while. He only played a handful of games with them, only 8 games. He spent most of the time in the minors. Then he played 66 games the next year, 9 goals, 12 assists, 21 points with the Kings. He was only 20 years old. He's coming along. But what happens across the country, the Islanders have some owners that want to pare down their payroll to roughly $15 million. I am not making that up. You can look it up. That was what they wanted. It's hopefully less than $15 million. This was not John Spano. This was the guys who followed him. Steve Gluckstern, the Milstein brothers. I've said it before. These guys do not get enough grief for how awful they were. And this was probably the worst aspect of their entire career, is that they wanted to get their payroll down so that they can, just run bare bones and get Nassau Coliseum to foot the bill, Nassau County to foot the bill for a new Coliseum, and then sell the whole thing to some other sucker for a profit. And in order to get that payroll down, they had to trade the team's 1 good player. And that was Zygmunt Palffy. Scored 40 goals 3 years in a row on one of the worst teams on God's green earth that you've ever seen. It was awful. I was there. They were terrible, but Ziggy was fantastic. And we don't need to get too far into this, but the original trade was to send Palffy to the Rangers. Believe it or not, it's going to be for Todd Harvey, Nicholas Sundstrom, a couple other guys, and God only knows what. But the owners asked for more money in the Cablevision deal, because obviously the owners of Cablevision also own the Rangers. Gary Bettman steps in and he's like, no, not going to happen. Find another trade. So Mike Milbury finally, now the Kings were interested in Jokinen as I went through all these clips to find this out. And they were looking into it. But what's funny is that Mike Milbury, he didn't want Olli Jokinen. He wanted a center named Pavel Rosa and a defenseman named Matthew Biron. Before we get too far ahead, what do you guys remember about this era? Mike, I know this is probably very, very well before your time as a fan, right? Like this isn't
yeah, it was kind of like right as I started to understand the Islanders, and my brother's favorite player, along with everybody on Long Island, was Ziggy Palffy. So I just remember being like very confused when I was huge Yankee fan when I was like around this age too, and I would every morning before I went to school, I'd wake up, I'd flip the newspaper over to the sports section, and I'd kind of go through it, and Pepper, my older brothers or dad or whoever, with questions about like why this is happening, or did you see that the Twins beat the Rangers last night, just like random stuff like that, and go through box scores and just nerd out instead of watching like early morning cartoons. Like that's what I did, and
that served you well.
Yeah, exactly. I just remember being really confused because I was like, well, I don't get it. Like, why does that matter? Why does it matter that the Islanders needed to get more money? Like, I don't understand. This is sports. It's not a business. This is sports. Yeah. It's fun. It's supposed to be fun, and just having that moment, and it kind of was a door opening moment into, okay, like I'm an Islander fan now. Like I'm 9 years old, but you're at that point, like if you planted your flag with a team, and you're probably gonna stick with that team forever, for better or worse. And I was an Islander fan, and I started to understand that when it comes to the Islanders, it's just not going to be like, for example, the Yankees. It's not going to be straight. Oh, that guy's really good. We can go get him. Like it's going to be almost the exact opposite of that. So that was confusing. Kind of a watershed moment for me. An opportunity for me to kind of, I guess, choose between the two forks in the road. Do I want to bail out now that I'm seeing them trade away like the one cool player on the team, or do I want to stick with it? And unfortunately, I stuck with it.
Yeah, which did not serve you well.
No.
David, what about you? You and I are a little bit older, and I mean, what's your recollection of this very dark time in which it seemed as if Ziggy Palffy could be traded to the Rangers, which would have been, I mean, at that point, they might as well just fold the franchise. But like, do you remember any of this at all? Because I remember this a lot, actually.
I remember it. I mean, it was the height of the fish sticks era.
Yes.
I think I was looking at my Turgeon jersey that I have that I wear at all the games is getting a little bit ratty from taking it to so many games, and I was thinking about getting a Palffy jersey after this conversation. Honestly, I think that's like a good zone of my I like to get jerseys of players who are not on the team, because you never know what's going to happen to players who are on the team. You got to have some history. And Palffy seems like a good one. And I was looking. I don't know if I want to go for the fisherman teal jersey that's what he wore most of his career. I didn't realize that, but I remember that, and I remember him being a great player and really being the core of the team. I would, like I said, I used to go to to have my birthday party at the games, bring like 6 friends, and the tickets were very cheap. The team was terrible, but it was fun. We'd have a good time. And he was the player who was clearly the best player of the team. And it was definitely disappointing when they moved him. As a kid, you're like, this is my team and this is our best player. We better be getting something good for him,
Yeah.
But I didn't really fully understand how that works, but it was definitely disappointing.
I remember literally being sick to my stomach at the idea of him playing for the Rangers, because they were also going to send Rich Pilon to the Rangers too. Which would have been like, oh, come on, really? And like, at first I remember being like, no, come on, that's not going to happen. Because the only trade that has ever happened between these two actually would, I think, because the only trade, I was thinking of Jan Hlavik, but Hlavik he was sort of laundered through Calgary at one point. But the Rangers had traded somebody to Ron Stewart, I think, had been traded to the Islanders like in '72 before the Islanders even played. So at that point, that didn't really count. And so I was like, no, this can't really be happening. Like, come on, that's not going to happen. But apparently they were very close. And Todd Harvey, for those who don't remember, was kind of a pesky player. He was a little like Sean Avery, only not as good. And then Nicholas Sundstrom was an okay player, but he was like a third liner. Like he wasn't, really, he was a third liner that, Rangers fans and broadcasters wanted you to think was a second liner or a first liner. And there was some other.
Sounds familiar, Rangers.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they made it happen.
Do that to this day.
Yeah. And so this would have been absolutely terrible. But again, thank you, Commissioner Bettman, for stepping in and being like, yeah, don't make that happen.
Thank you, Commissioner Bettman. That's not something you
Yeah.
hear all the time. And it's funny that I think the Ziggy Palffy trade in general was for fans of, I guess, my vintage, let's call them the Sean Bates fans, right? Like,
Right.
this was the first time your team betrayed you,
Yeah,
right? Like
that's
you
true.
don't think that like a sports team can do that because you're the fans. They're supposed to be here for you to entertain you, to make you happy. Like that's kind of the cut and dry of sports when you whittle it down to its very simplest form. And when it plays out on the field of battle, it's one thing, right? These guys are playing and they lost to another team, but when it's in the boardroom and you get betrayed, then it becomes a whole different thing. So it really was a kind of a one of those moments where like a movie, like a loss of innocence moment, like oh God, what's that movie with River Phoenix? Stand By Me. I feel like this was the Stand By Me moment for a lot of Islander fans.
Yeah.
Instead of discovering a dead body in the river, they traded Ziggy Palffy away.
No, that's a good point.
As a kid, he's got such a great name too. I mean, I think that's like
exactly.
the way he played, the name, like
his hair, everything about him was
the whole thing. He's got the whole package for young Islander fans. It was perfect stab in the back.
At least they're getting a guy with a cool name back. So you're like, okay, like this Olli Jokinen, like you're trading a Ziggy for an Olli, like maybe it could work, but it doesn't.
Check guy for Finnish guy,
yeah.
Didn't really work out that way. So, but again,
it was just step one.
This was step one. Yeah, this is going to be a long one.
Interestingly, like you don't, if you look back, like what if you're going to have to trade a player like Palffy, you want to get 2 first-round picks. Yeah. At least, I mean, it's a terrible trade, but it's interesting. They took Taylor Pyatt with the first-round pick that they got in the trade, and then who they eventually traded for Michael Pekka, which is kind of fun.
Yeah,
and that draft with Jokinen and Luongo and Brewer right after him with also the Islanders, like all these things tie together in such a weird way.
Yeah, the whole era kind of melts together. But yeah, basically, so eventually Milbury did work with the Kings on making a trade here. And the final deal was Palffy, Brian Smolinski, and Marcel Cousineau, who was a goalie who got some playing time for the Islanders, to the Kings for Jokinen, left wing Josh Green, defenseman Matthew Biron, who would play for the Islanders a lot, and the number 8 pick, which, as David said, was used on Taylor Pyatt, who would go on to have a pretty okay career, although after leaving the Islanders. They also sent the Kings a 4th round pick at that point. Another funny note about this was that Jokinen had actually been scouted by the Islanders before he was drafted, before he was drafted by the Kings. The thing was, the guy doing the scouting for the Islanders was Darcy Regier, who by 1999, A, wasn't with the Islanders anymore, and B, at any point did not get along with Mike Milbury. So whoever Darcy was recommending to Mike, he wasn't going to want. And so somehow they convinced, somebody must have convinced Milbury to take Jokinen, even though he didn't want him. Again, he wanted Pavel Rosa, who I don't remember doing all that much with the Kings or anybody. But anyway, that was it. And that closed the chapter on Ziggy Palffy. And Milbury said at the time, you never want to trade a player as special as Ziggy, but we are happy to get a collection of talented young players and our third top 10 pick in return. We believe Jokinen will immediately become a fan favorite for his talent and character. And we expect Green to be a solid player next season too. Yeah, okay, Mike, we'll see about that. So this thing happens. Thank God he didn't get traded to the Rangers, but this is obviously, you talk about a reset button. This is like hitting a reset button and then taking the thing out and like throwing it out a window. Like there's no more of a reset than trading your only good player, the only guy who could score any goals. And I remember thinking at the time, like, who the hell's going to score goals for this team? I just didn't know. And so here comes training camp 1999. This is the 99, 2000, NHL 2000. They had patches and everything. Jokinen comes into camp under new coach Butch Goring, and it didn't go too well. He was overweight. He was apparently 10 pounds over. Butch was complaining. He was upset. His playing weight isn't as good as he ought to be. And of course, Mike Milbury comes out with the classic Milbury-ism. Olli came in a tad roly, which is great, Mike. That's really that's how you get off on the right foot right there. Make a crack about your brand new, possibly number one center's weight. This is not good. I mean, I don't even know how to, like, could you imagine if somebody had said, like, can you imagine if, like, next year Patrick was like, yeah, this guy's a little fat this year, huh? Like, what? Yeah. He'd be fired a day later. Like, it's crazy.
I mean, Gar Snow caught it for making Josh Hosang run.
Oh my God.
Stairs, right? Like, this is 10 times worse than that. So,
seriously.
Yeah. And this is Goring's first season as a coach, right after Milbury was the coach?
I believe so, yeah. Let me double check, but I believe it was Butch's first year. Yeah, it was Butch's first year, because then he was fired halfway through the next year.
Can you imagine, like, walking into that, coming off the GM being the coach?
Yeah. Bill Stewart was the coach just before Butch for half the season. Right. And because Milbury fired himself. And let me tell you, I want to do an episode on Bill Stewart. I have a few people I want to bring on for that, because he's going to be a weird Islanders coach for sure. But yeah, so things did not get off on the right foot. But again, this is, we knew they were going to be bad, and that's okay. It's a rebuilding year. But they did have some moments. So here on December 20th, 1999, Luongo makes 46 saves in a game against a 5-3 win over the Devils. Jokinen scored. He ended a 21-game goal drought, did Olli Jokinen in that game. And he had a 2-point night assisting on Gino Ojic's goal. Man, what were the Devils on that night to lose to that crew? But things, again, didn't really get a whole lot better from camp. So, yeah, Jokinen broke a 21-game drought and then promptly had a 19-game drought following that. So it did not go really well. These were the darkest of dark ages. I don't even know how to even describe this. It was just like, I remember watching a lot of these games because I was an intern at the time, or I was working with the graphic arts studio that did a lot of work for the Islanders, and I had free games, and I would just go and I would be sitting there being like, why am I here? Why am I watching this? I don't understand. Like, what, if they went into a period like this again, I don't know if I would watch. Honestly, I'd be like, life is too short. Like, come back to me when you guys can, like, be a little bit competitive, because this was not competitive.
I mean, this year wasn't like that year, but I had similar feelings this season.
Wow, that's true.
A few times.
Yeah,
different reasons, I guess.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, this was.
I guess our expectations have been lifted a little bit.
Nice. Yeah. This is this is where we always kind of tell people on Islanders anxiety, like, careful what you wish for when it comes to tearing things down to the studs, because then you end up with Olli coming in a little roly, crowd announced attendances of 9,290. Like, this is it gets bad, and it like Dan said, like, it gets to the point where you're just like, yeah, kind of not gonna even waste my time with this team. I'll catch back up in 4 or 5 years. And the sad reality is, there's a lot of people who probably just fell off the treadmill here and just never came back, and you can't blame them, because it was terrible. And for a lot of people, that was the the rebuilds in, like, after the 2007 season. A lot of people had the same kind of situation, but you gotta be careful here, because this is it could get really bad. And when you're not a heavyweight in the sport, like, it becomes a lot harder to find your way out of these dark eras. So just another PSA about rebuilding via this Olli Jokinen episode.
Yeah, right. Exactly. You don't want to put all your eggs in a basket like this and, like, get stuck with this. And even the good moments, like, again, we have, some wins here later on, just weren't enough. Like, there was a comeback win Jokinen scored in against the Flyers, because he started getting hot later. I'll get to that in a second. But, you had guys like Tim Connolly, Brad Isbister, Nicholas Anderson. This team was led in scoring by Mariusz Czerkawski this year with his 70 points, 35 goals. I remember thinking, wow, this Czerkawski guy is going to be really, really good. And, he had the puck all the time. And so he just scored a lot, and these were going to be the best moments of Marius's career, and he would be remembered well for all these times. But I mean, this is also the year that Claude Lapointe was their second line center, and sometimes their first line center, and that's just not going to work. This is also the Jorgen Janssen season, which I just talked about in a previous episode of this show, because it's, again, another fascinating guy who came over, and it could have been something, and it just wasn't. I mean, David, again, like, what do you remember anything specific about this year? Any kind of feeling, some of those birthday parties, maybe not quite as festive as they probably should have been, watching these clowns, that when the clowns are on the ice and not at the birthday party, right. It's probably pretty rough.
They had some, I remember them having some interesting young players. They just couldn't put it together. You got the Isbister, Scatchard, I think was a rookie. Kenny Janssen was like starting to play his game as defense,
that was his year as captain. It was Kenny.
Yeah,
that was Kenny's year as captain.
And but yeah, they just couldn't get out of their own way,
Yeah, they did have a young defenseman by the name of Zdeno Chara on that season as well. Right. but yeah, just things are pretty bad, and Jokinen never really got on track, never really kind of figured it out. But towards the end of the season, the rumor mill starts picking up, and the rumor mill gets caught with Olli Jokinen in it, and all of a sudden, people are talking about maybe the Islanders are going to trade him. It's not working out there. There was a rumor that he was going to go to Ottawa for Vinny Prospal, who would move around a lot as well. He played for Tampa Bay for a while there too. And it didn't happen, but something snapped in Jokinen. And we'll get to this again in a little later when he leaves the Islanders and kind of becomes a totally different player. Something changed in him around this time. And I think, I'm not Olli Jokinen, but I'm going to assume that he probably started getting pissed off that, he opens up a newspaper or some Finnish reporter's like, "Hey man, I heard you're getting traded to Ottawa." And he's like, "What the hell are you talking about?" But it turns out he ends up starting to score goals. He ends up getting 5 goals in a stretch of 6 games. He ends up scoring the overtime goal in a win over the Stars, who were the defending Stanley Cup champions. And somehow this terrible Islanders team that only won 24 games that entire season somehow beat the defending Stanley Cup champions. I don't know how they did it. Apparently they had a bunch of guys hurt, but he said, after the game, like, we heard all the jokes. People were saying we were a minor league team, but we want to prove that we can play. We're playing the defending Stanley Cup champions, so this is a big game for us. Like, that's a huge deal for them to have won and beat Manny Fernandez, of all people, in goal. I'm not even going to bother to ask if anybody remembers this game, because we don't. I certainly don't either. But, like,
I remember Manny Fernandez, though.
I do remember Jacques Lemaire's son-in-law, by the way. That's how he ended up playing for the Wild. Yeah.
We took it all. We brought them to our land. An endless night, ember hot and icy cold. The rage of the earth. We made this curse. Carved it in the blood on our backs. We did not see. We could not, but she did. And in the end...
What will I become? Senua's Saga. Hellblade 2.
Play it now with Game Pass.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. With the price of just about everything going up during inflation, we thought we'd bring our prices down. So to help us, we brought in a reverse auctioneer, which is apparently a thing.
Mint Mobile Unlimited Premium Wireless. How to get 30, 30, bit to get 30, bit to get 20, 20, 20, bit to get 20, 20, bit to get 15, 15, 15, 15, just $15 a month? Sold!
Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 up front for 3 months plus taxes and fees. Promo rate for new customers for limited time. Unlimited more than 40 gigabytes per month. Slows full terms at mintmobile.com.
Okay, round 2. Name something that's not boring.
A laundry? Ooh, a book club. Computer solitaire, huh?
Ah, sorry, we were looking for Chumba Casino. That's right, ChumbaCasino.com has over 100 casino-style games. Join today and play for free for your chance to redeem some serious prizes. ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+. Terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
Hello, it is Ryan, and we could all use an extra bright spot in our day, couldn't we? Just to make up for things like sitting in traffic, doing the dishes, counting your steps, all the mundane stuff. That is why I'm such a big fan of Chumba Casino. Chumba Casino has all your favorite social casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere with daily bonuses. That should brighten your day a little. Actually, a lot. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com. That's ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
It is funny that a guy who's had let's be honest, a bad season coming over for a new team, I'm sure he's upset getting traded at 20, 21 years old. He comes to a team, they're terrible. The coach isn't connecting with him. He's in the trade rumors, and all of a sudden he starts to turn it on and score goals. And I'm sure to him, he thinks, well, I'm gonna prove my worth and save my job. But yeah, that isn't how it goes. That is absolutely not how it goes here. And it's a real shame.
Normal franchise on a normal GM, it might go that way.
Okay, well, that's a perfect segue because Mike Milbury is about to strike again. So, June 25th, year 2000, Olli Jokinen's Islanders' tenure comes to an abrupt end when he is traded with Roberto Luongo to the Florida Panthers for Mark Parrish and Olli Kavasha, 2 forwards. Now, whenever we talk about this trade, I always have to kind of separate Mark Parrish because he did have quality Islanders career. But I have said it before, and I will say it again, and I will say it forever. This is the worst trade in Islanders history. Like, there's no way. Like, you got Yashin, Char, or whatever. No.
Absolutely worst.
This is the worst. This is the worst. So, I know that we remember when this thing went down. So, David, you're first. Where were you when the Luongo trade went down? And do you remember your initial feelings about what? Why would you do that? Now, they also, of course, obviously drafted Rick DiPietro, the day later. But still, like,
which one happened
Luongo's
first?
crazy.
What I don't remember is if they traded Luongo first or they drafted DiPietro first.
They drafted Rick first, and then a couple of picks later, they traded Luongo for.
So I remember talking to my buddy Scott, who's a huge Islander fan, listener. Little shout out to him, but and saying like, why would we take a goalie when we have a goalie? And we have a goalie that people seem to think is good.
Right.
And we're just like, we're in high school. We're just like getting to the age of understanding like what a good player could be. And you understand you need to have a good goalie. I think in that, what's that era? That's the Y era, right? I mean, and we hadn't had a good goalie. I don't think really. I mean, I remember Tommy Salo, maybe.
Yeah, but
there's
even he
but
couldn't
like
save him.
Fischel and Soderstrom is like the goalies when we're growing up, and so people were talking about Luongo. They were saying he could be a really good goalie, like these other good goalies on like Brodeur,
Right.
And then we drafted DiPietro first overall. We had the number 1 pick. I remember thinking, oh, we can get a good player to go with our good goalie. And then they took DiPietro. It was very confusing. And then they traded Luongo. It was even more confusing. And then they added in Jokinen for God knows what reason.
Yeah.
I mean, I still can't imagine that you couldn't get, and Mark Parrish did have a good, solid career with the Islanders, like you said. But I can't imagine you couldn't get those 2 players for Luongo and some other piece that it was not the 3rd overall pick, with his potential.
Well, they also got the 5th overall pick, which ended up being Raffi Torres. And now that I look back, I think this is the final piece of the puzzle, and that we've talked about basically everybody in this trade on this show who could qualify as a weird Islander. Obviously, Kavasha and Parrish played way too many games. But Mike, we did an episode on Luongo getting traded. We did an episode on Raffi Torres. We're here talking about Olli Jokinen. I mean, what is left to say about this trade that we haven't already discussed? Like, it's still impossible to wrap my mind around it. We talk about Rick all the time. We've talked about shout out to Scott, but also shout out to our buddy John Muir at Olli Kavasha on Twitter. Like, this trade reverberates through so much, and obviously the drafting of Rick. And we talked about this before with our friend Sean Cuthbert. Like, everything goes back to Rick. Everything just centers around him from this trade forward.
For sure.
Yeah, the thing that I remember like really vividly just about this day in the trade and stuff, it is really Rick, like, and the confusion and like kind of the chaos and you kind of become accustomed to the chaos and you just assume, oh, this is how sports work. This is how every team operates. Every team just trades away players like this all the time because that's what Mike Milbury does. He just would make these kind of trades once or twice a season and you get used to it. So like what we're going through now with Lou and even Snow, like it was much more calculated and quiet and making trades for Shane Prince or plucking PA Parenteau off waivers and stuff like that. This is what I thought was normal for a while, and that's to this day, like I kind of feel that, like kind of have that feeling still in my bones. But this show is predicated on players who have come and gone and played very little in terms of like on ice minutes, but have had gigantic impacts on our lives and like our fandom. The Rick show that we will do eventually, which is coming, the special on it is going to be so like just it's immense and crazy, and it all starts here, and it starts with someone like Olli Jokinen and Olli Kavasha and these kind of bit part players who very few people are going to know that Olli Jokinen was an Islander off the island, but everybody knows that Rick DiPietro was an Islander, and that but they can't connect the dots that these two players had without Olli Jokinen and without the Ziggy Palffy trade, there is no Rick DiPietro, right? Like, so it's just this crazy, weird revolving doors in the cosmos moment with these guys, and it's like that day, the trade, and I'll be 100% honest, like I was a huge Rick guy for the beginning of his Islander career. I was so excited. I was like, this
had to be right.
Yeah, if they made this trade to clear room for Rick DiPietro, he had to be good, and he was brash and the cool pads and everything. And the complicated relationship. I think you'd be really hard pressed to find a player on any team in the NHL that has had like a more complicated relationship with individual fans than Rick. Like, I don't think anyone's got a straightforward I loved him or I hated him relationship with Rick after his time with the Islanders, the contract and everything, the trade, like all the baggage that comes with him. And part of that baggage was Olli Jokinen, right? Like that the Islanders traded away this player who ends up playing 1,000 games in the NHL.
Yeah, even the haters of Rick, and there are many, would all be like, yeah, but you know what? He signed and like, it wasn't his fault that he got hurt all the time. Like, nobody wishes, injuries on people. And then there are the people that are huge fans who still wear his jersey to this day that would have to acknowledge that was a bad trade. Like, it just was, and the Islanders could have made out better with Luongo. It's funny that, they traded a guy who almost never lost time due to injury for a guy who almost always lost time due to injury. But yeah, so Jokinen left the Islanders with a great stat line. Exactly 82 games played, 11 goals, 10 assists, 21 points. Again, most of those goals happening around or just after the trade deadline. And it's just so funny that he's exactly one season. That was it. This man would go on to play for 17 years, over 1,200 games, and exactly 82 of them came on Long Island as an Islander. And like we've said, like this is one stop in this guy's long career, but there's an important one. And again, it goes back to the Palffy trade, which, in a way kind of almost goes back to the 93 squad that went on to the conference finals because Palffy was on that team. And it's just so many things. But, Rick is sort of like the demarcation point in this trade and getting, even with all due respect to Mark Parrish, Olli Kavasha, and Raffi Torres, is about two guys. And Olli Jokinen, it's about two guys. It's about Luongo and DiPietro. And the funny thing is as much as this trade sucks and still sucks, and I will always think it sucks, 90% of the suckage comes from the Luongo aspect of it. But Jokinen turned out to be a hell of a player. That's the funny thing. And we completely forget about it because the Luongo thing is so crazy. And he would go on to play for Florida for a long time and was their captain. He would have 3 straight 30-goal seasons, 4 in 5 years, almost another one too when he got traded to Phoenix. David, did you follow Jokinen's career at all after this? Let's just focus on the Florida aspect of it. But I mean, he was with the Panthers for 8 years. Again, he was the captain for a while, 7 years. I mean, did you still kind of keep an eye on him? Did you kind of wish that he was still here? What was your relationship like with Olli Jokinen after he got traded away in that awful, awful trade?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I followed him so closely, being not an Islander anymore and only being on the team for a year. But whenever, on SportsCenter, they would show some kind of highlight of him scoring a goal, or, I'd say, oh yeah, that guy was on our team. We traded him away too, and maybe, I'm sure there were photos and videos of him and Luongo, celebrating together. Sure. I mean, that's not like Florida was anything great during the years that he was on the team. It took them a while to get to where they are. I think he was long gone, but by the time Florida did anything. but it's still, there's just, even if you're not paying that close of attention to him as a player, somewhere in the back of your mind, you remember that they traded him away for almost, not nothing, but almost nothing.
Yeah. So 2002, 2003, this is when, Mike talked about, the Islanders of 2001, 2002 being his sort of really formative team. 2002, 2003, Jokinen breaks out. 36 goals, 29 assists, 65 points. Then he had 26 goals a year later, 38. His best season with the Panthers, 82 games, 39 goals, 52 assists, 91 points in 06-07. And it became kind of a thing, like that this guy was blossoming before everyone's eyes. And back in 2002, which we were just talking about, he had something like, he had 15 goals halfway through the season. He already surpassed his previous goal total the year before, to the point where it started getting people's attention, including one Michael Farber, of all people, who wrote about him in Sports Illustrated and, tried to probe Jokinen as to how this turnabout happened. And to make a long story short, I'll link to this article when we post this. Basically, Mike Keenan was the Panthers coach at the time, and Keenan had a sort of standing kind of idea to just completely obliterate and humiliate and dress down a player that he thought deserved it. And so he went in on Jokinen one time for about 10 minutes after a game, telling him how awful he was, how the scouts who scouted him were all wrong. He's garbage. He's terrible. And from that point on, Jokinen was a much better player. He said he started to snap to, and he's like, you could take it, one of two ways. And he took it as a challenge, and he came out of it the other side, multiple time 30 goal scorer. But, the Panthers being the Panthers, they had to trade him for whatever reason. I'm sure they weren't going to pay anybody. And this thus began the Olli Jokinen tour of the NHL. Calgary. He got traded to Phoenix. He got traded to Calgary. He signed back with Calgary. He signed with Winnipeg. He got traded to Nashville for a first-round pick that turned into Travis Konechny, which is kind of crazy. He got traded to St. Louis. Raise your hand if you remember St. Louis Blue, Olli Jokinen. I certainly didn't. He signed with the Leafs and then suffered an injury, but then and then that was about it. He did not, that was his last. He signed with the Leafs. Let me back up. He got traded from Nashville to Toronto. He got hurt there. Then he got traded to St. Louis, and that was about it. He got hurt in a game against the Leafs, and that was the end of his career. And that was in 2015, and that was the last anybody saw of Olli Jokinen. He would sign an honorary contract with the Panthers in 2017 to announce his retirement with the team, and has kind of always identified himself as a Panther.
I also remember his, 2010, he was on Team Finland, and I remember everyone was really into that Olympics that season because Team USA was actually good, and that was the year we beat Finland to make it to the gold medal game, the very famous gold medal game where Crosby, that guy, scored the game winner in overtime to win the gold medal for Canada. But he had a great career. Interestingly, I'm looking at it here, like he only made the playoffs one time.
Yes, that is true. Crazy. That is crazy. 17 years in the league, 1,230 something games, 6 playoff games, all with Calgary in 2008, 2009. That's it. Is that unbelievable?
Wild.
Yeah, that's the most bizarre thing about this whole thing.
Right.
And so there's a huge moment in Islander history. So that Olli helped out with, that we didn't bring up yet.
Oh.
That so he of course has very little impact on the Islanders' history as a player. Of course, it's the opposite of that in terms of just like him in trades. But fast forward to 2009-10, and that shootout with the Rangers. I don't know if you remember this. Do you remember the 2010 Rangers season? How it ended?
No.
So they were playing a win and in game against the Philadelphia Flyers. And
you
remember this? No,
I think so. Yeah.
And the game goes to a shootout, and the goaltending matchup was Henrik Lundqvist against Brian Boucher. And I was in college at the time. I'm living amongst a bunch of Ranger fans, and they're all pumped. They're watching this shootout, I am in there watching it in like the main room of our common room, and I have locked myself into a little study corridor in the suite, watching with one of my roommates who also hated the Rangers. Funny enough, his brother-in-law is now the general manager of the Rangers, but that is for another story for another day. But so me and him are watching the Rangers, and the Flyers end up winning the shootout, and it was for the Rangers. The shooters were, and this is just so brilliant, Eric Christensen, who was like a shootout monster. Like that was the reason he was on the team. He missed. P.A. Parento scored. The Flyers had scored 2. I can't remember who scored for them, but then it all came down. The season was on the stick of Olli Jokinen.
Olli Jokinen must score to keep the Rangers season alive. He's 5 for 9 this year in shootouts. 40% for his career as he starts from way back near his own goal line and picks up the puck with lots of speed. Roaring on in is Jokinen. The deep, the save by Boucher, and the Flyers are going to the playoffs. A classic here at the Wachovia Center.
And great for Brian Boucher to make that save to get the Flyers in the playoffs under a lot of scrutiny here. He comes up and gets the job done. New York Rangers are heading home. Don't want to leave just yet, but they have to. And the Flyers are heading to the playoffs.
It's weird. You almost expect the teams to be lining up for the handshake. But no, this is a regular season game. Certainly felt like Game 7. And now it's a shootout, and Brian Boucher closing the pads and closing the door on the Rangers season.
Olli Jokinen came a long way to get down there, and Brian Boucher covered the bottom of the net, kept it from going out of through the legs, and look at the excitement from Brian Boucher. Flyers back in the playoffs.
And Brian Boucher stopped him. And Peter Laviolette's Philadelphia Flyers eliminated the New York Rangers from the playoffs. I think it was the only season between 2005, 6 and 2000, whatever that letter went out, 17. So the only season they didn't make the playoffs. Wow. So just to think about that for Jokinen, right? He's made the playoffs. He had 6 total games of playoff hockey. He did make them count, by the way, 5 points in 6 games with the Flames in 2008-9. So it was the season before that that he gets into the playoffs, and he comes to the Rangers. He's thinking, all right, I'm going to get in again with this team. And he literally had the ticket on his stick and couldn't get him in. So, right. Appreciate that, at least, that he did help us there. But, yeah, that was a shining day, because that was, once again, talking about dark times like that. Yeah, we had just drafted a player right before Victor Hedman a couple months prior to that, and it did seem like the Islanders were heading in the right direction, but still, like, they were terrible and out of playoffs forever. So the entire point of watching the NHL from November on was to make sure that the Rangers would lose, and this game was what eliminated them. So yeah, thank you to Brian Boucher and Olli Jokinen for that.
That's amazing.
It's incredible.
It's also amazing that I now have another video to put in here, because the only video I could find of Jokinen playing for the Islanders was in a fight, which I don't remember him ever having. But the best part about this fight video was that it was number 3 overall pick Olli Jokinen against number 1 overall pick Alexander Daig, of all people.
Didn't want to shoot the puck. And now we've got penalties, and Dave drops the gloves with Jokinen. I don't know if he's ever had a fighting major. No, Jokinen's got that big right hand loose. He's big. Sweater is not tied down, as you see from Daig. Daig protecting himself, as Jokinen's got the right hand going.
I think Daig needs some lessons. May have to call Roy Jones Jr.
I don't know who ticked off who, but this fight is on YouTube. I'm obviously gonna, link it in there, but it's I couldn't believe that there were no goals of this man. I mean, he didn't have a lot of goals as an Islander, but you think one of them would have been on YouTube, but not so much. But the shootout non-goal works just as well. So It's funny too. One other thing I completely forgot to mention that when he got traded from the Islanders to the Panthers, they talked to him and he was still pretty bitter. Luongo too, for that matter. And Jokinen's money line, I guess he waited all this time to get back at the Tad Rowley line from Milbury. And he said the trade just ticked him off. He said the year before with the Kings, I played power play and they said I can't on the Islanders. I'd say the Kings had a little better year than the Islanders. So not quite as pithy as Olli's a little Rolly, but I think he got the point out across. So yeah, I mean, an incredible career. Again, 1,200 games, 17 years in the league. You know, most of it, the best years spent with Florida, 188 goals with the Panthers. I'm sure he's either their number one goal scorer or close to it. Before Barkov, I'm sure, passed him. 419 points as a Panther, which is nothing too shabby either. 236 games with Calgary, 165 points, 59 goals. It's also not too bad. Everything else is kind of all over the place. He spent a longer time in Winnipeg than I thought too. 127 games, 2 stints, by the way, with Calgary. But yeah, his Rangers career didn't last very long. Only 26 games there. His Nashville, 48 games there. Phoenix with the Coyotes, RIP the Coyotes, 57 games there, and obviously the 82 with the Islanders. So all over the place. But believe it or not, he came back into Islanders world. Actually, before we get to there, we should mention that internationally, and David, you mentioned this a little bit before, this guy has an incredibly decorated career. He won a silver medal at the Olympics. He won 2 bronze medals at the Olympics. He won World Junior gold. He won 3 silvers at the World Championships, 3 bronzes at the World Championships, silver with Finland at the World Cup of Hockey. Like, this guy did everything you could possibly do except make the playoffs in the NHL and make it as an Islander. I don't know how that happened, but man, I guess star-crossed is probably the best way to describe this career, right? Like, how else could you describe this? Like, just so much success and yet not that much. It's kind of crazy. I don't know how else to describe it.
It really makes no sense. I think it's the thing about hockey. It's like, just a few little bounces here and there changes the whole trajectory of a career. It's crazy.
Basically, yeah, it's true.
And I mean, you come into the league as the number 3 overall pick too. Like, I know the NHL was much more of a Wild West back then, but still, like you're drafted 3rd overall in a 1997 draft that was really, really good, like really good. Especially like that top 5 with Thornton, Marlowe, Jokinen, Luongo, Brewer. I mean, you go down the list of the first round, like Marian Hossa's in there. There's some really good players. Sergei Samsonov. So you get drafted 3rd overall ahead of a bunch of players like that, and you think, I'm gonna have a pretty, like, the path is laid out for a player like that. And then Mike Milbury gets involved, right? Like, and then you just are at you're just totally in the wind at that point. Like, if once Mike Milbury touches you, like, nothing will ever be the same. And Olli found that out.
Seriously.
In I don't want to say the hard way, but he definitely found it out.
Right. Yeah. I mean, talk about the Wild West. Nothing was wilder than the Islanders back in that era for sure. But there is one final Islanders connection with Olli Jokinen, and it involves another big trade, although this one has worked out for the Islanders, to say the least. So
it depends on who you ask.
It depends on who. Yeah. Don't ask the Athletic, because they will tell you this was a lose-lose trade. But for most people, I think we can say that the Bo Horvat trade has worked out pretty well for the Islanders. Well, in that trade, the Islanders had to give up Anthony Beauvillier and prospect Aatu Räty. Well, who was coaching Aatu Räty in Finnish league? It was Olli Jokinen with Jokerit. He's since moved on to Timrå of the Swedish Hockey League. But yeah, so I don't know if Olli Jokinen was in Aatu Räty's ear saying, yeah, you don't want to get involved with these guys. You want to try and get traded as soon as possible. But it is kind of funny that, you read all this about Räty and then you're like, wait, his coach is who? And again, if you're my age or younger, like David or Mike, that name, the name Olli Jokinen, is just going to, conjure. I mean, dude, I got two pages of notes here on this guy, and he played 82 games for this. So it just brings up a whole flood of emotions and waves. I mean, David, did you remember seeing this and being like, wait, what? Who was coaching this kid?
It's crazy. There's the connections. Weird Islanders connections. It's just they keep coming back. I'm sure Atu Ratu will be an episode one day.
Oh my God!
If he ever becomes something,
or if he doesn't, we have a lot of people who are chomping at the bit to do that one. But yeah, so I mean, Mike, what did you think? Like, I mean, we joked about it on Twitter, but like, was there any sort of like, did you have any sort of connection to this at all? Like, well, maybe we can make it work. Maybe, or were you just like, yeah, this guy's just a weird Islander for life?
Yeah, like I remember when it popped up, and it's Jokinen sounded, and with the way that these things kind of get covered with prospects,
right?
And every team's media contingent does this. Like there just are people, like every prospect is gonna be a star. So I remember when Ratu was playing, and he was, to his credit, like playing pretty well with the Islanders. And the quotes, like people be like, well, it shouldn't be a surprise given what Olli Jokinen had said about his development back in July or whatever. And you just would read this quote, like I'm just cracking up thinking like about Olli Jokinen explaining, this player, and like you said, like talking to him about, oh yeah, no, you're drafted by the Islanders. Like the less I say about my experience there, the better. But we'll keep it copacetic. But it started to endear Jokinen to me more because I was like, oh, if Olli Jokinen says this guy's gonna make it, I trust him. Right. Whose judgment is better than Olli Jokinen? But it's yeah. So it was just a funny little wrinkle, right? Like, and it gets you thinking about Jokinen, and you like go and try to remember like his Islander days, and next thing you know, like you see him wearing number 62, like it's just in those weird jerseys. And something doesn't compute, and for a guy who really did the tour, like you said, after his time in Florida, there's a lot of weird pictures of Olli Jokinen and weird jerseys, but still that Islanders jersey is still easily the weirdest if you were to ask a non-Islanders person, like, and you laid out all his official NHL images, you would pick out the weirdest one. I think every one of them would be like, yeah, the Islanders. When did he play for the Islanders?
And there's something about him wearing the Islanders jersey that, like, the jersey doesn't look like it fits him. Like he's just like this young guy, and it's like this big weird wavy jersey, and it just like looks like it's a couple sizes too big. I don't know, for whatever reason when I see it. Yeah. That's what I think. It's like it's just not the right fit.
No, not the right fit, not the right guy, not the right time, not the right coach, not the right situation, not the right general manager, not the right anything for this guy. And again, like it's funny because for a long time I was a hater. Like I was just like, they lost Luongo, but I mean, Jokinen, get out of here. Like, who cares? And I think I may have read those quotes and maybe read that, he wasn't out of shape and he obviously didn't endear himself. When I think about him playing with the Islanders, I just remember him being kind of invisible a lot of the time and thinking like, this is the guy that they wanted in the Palffy trade. Really? He doesn't really do a whole lot. He's as big as he is. And so I was a hater for a long time. And it took me a long time to kind of look back at this guy's career and be like, you know what? He's a pretty darn good player. And I hate that it didn't work out. I don't think it was ever going to work out here. Like, I just don't think that it was ever,
not in that era.
Yeah, no, not in that era. Like maybe if he'd hung around and been under Peter Laviolette, who knows? But then they wouldn't have had Rick. They would have had Luongo, and it would have been a whole other situation. So, now I can look back at this guy and be like, you know what? Jokinen was a really good player. Wasn't going to work out with the Islanders. I'm glad it kind of worked out for him. It is a very star-crossed career. In there's not a lot of other guys. I think probably who's the other guy? Jay Bouwmeester, I think, is probably the only other guy who played that many games with that fewer playoff games. But he ended up winning a cup. Jay Bouwmeester. Jokinen never even came close. And so I could look back and be like, this guy's career was a good one. And the Islanders were that, again, very short stop, but I wonder how that played in his other stops and how he was like, yeah, never again. I'm not going to deal with this again. But Mike Keenan apparently was the guy who turned it around for him. So I do not hate Olli Jokinen anymore. I still hate this trade, but I can move on with my life and let go of a little bit of hate for this guy who, although I am with you.
Not
guys,
for Milbury.
Definitely not for Milbury. And I can say though, I definitely miss bald Olli Jokinen.
For sure.
Yeah. This has been great, David. I hope you've had a good time. Again, it was great.
Thanks, guys.
No problem. It was great meeting you at the live event. So what's on the horizon this summer for either Skurnik Wines or Pinot Project? Is there anything coming down the pipe for you guys? Any kind of new products or new promotions, anything like that?
Well, for the Pinot project, we just released our 2023 Rosé just in time for the weather warm up. It was 80 degrees in New York today.
Right.
And 2023 Pinot Grigio, and then the 2021 Pinot Noir. It just got 91 points from Wine Enthusiast. We did a little ad on the back of the issue that it was in. So excellent. if you in the April edition of Wine Enthusiast, you can see right on the back cover. It's nice.
Excellent.
For the company, I mean, we're a distributor. We're an importer of wines from all over the world, and a distributor in 9 states, New York and California being the 2 most significant. And just trying to keep the company moving forward. We're a family business, planning to be that way for a very long time. I'm really proud of what my family's built and what I've.
Yeah, it's your sisters, right? Your brothers, everybody's all involved, right?
Yeah, my sister's at the business. My cousin-in-law, let's say, is he and I are working towards the future together. He's our CFO. Big Islander fan is our COO. This guy Jim, who played goalie when he was younger and still continued, into his middle age time, and he actually had to get both of his hips replaced because of too much goalie playing. But we have a little Islanders contingent at our company, which is really nice. We still have an office in Jericho. And whenever there's something interesting going on about the Islanders, we the 5 of us put our heads together and we just say hey, what's, chat about what's going on. And it's nice. It's nice to have, that community that the Islanders fans have that I don't know if other fans have it the way we do. It's, going to our office out there, it's right by this bagel place called Bagel Master in Syosset. They have a bunch of Islanders pictures. The players come in and sign stuff. I've always gone there. There's a really special thing on the island. So,
yeah, it's very cool. And the Islanders have always had that sort of community feel. That's always been their thing. And I don't know if other teams have it, but when you mentioned playing goalie and getting both your hips replaced, that's the Rick DiPietro special. So your friend is very lucky. Your cousin is very lucky, or very unlucky.
Give me the Rick.
Yeah. But no, we really appreciate you coming on. We really appreciate you being one of our favorite sponsors, and we hope you continued success. And again, seriously, I know it's we hear the ad all the time, but I'm not kidding. If you are of age, kids, I know you're listening to this, don't drink the wine, but if you are of age, have yourself a glass of Pinot Project. I mean that sincerely. I'm not a wine guy, but this is good stuff, and I'm not kidding when I tell you. Every time we bring this to a party, somebody's like, "This is so good. What is this?" And I get to brag about you guys and us. So it's really great. So thanks you for coming on.
Thanks, guys. I really appreciate it.
No problem. Mike, where can everybody find you on Twitter?
You can find me at the Big Lebowski with 2 E's.
Follow Mike at the Big Lebowski. Read and listen to his work at Action Network. This is our penultimate episode for this season. So the next episode is the season finale. It is, in fact, the live episode from Offside NYC that we recorded. It's going to come out the week before the draft. If you are a Country Club tier subscriber at the Patreon, you not only get the episode ad-free, but there is a special deleted story that will be exclusive to Country Club tier subscribers at the Patreon. We had a story from one of Mike's good friends that didn't quite fit the Weird Islanders theme of the evening, but it's a hilarious story. And he was wearing maybe the greatest shirt I've ever seen. And to find out what that shirt was of, you're going to have to listen to the deleted scene. So check that out. And again, that episode, the live episode comes out just a week before the draft. And thanks very much for listening this season. It's been a lot of fun. We hope you've enjoyed it. We'll be back next season with a whole bunch more. Mike, any final thoughts on Olli Jokinen? Kind of superstar Weird Islander in a way. It's just, he's all over the place here. There's a lot to go on. Crazy career after the Islanders, but crazy season with the Islanders too.
Yeah. A superstar journeyman, I guess. I don't know. It's hard to really sum up Olli Jokinen. And that makes a lot of sense because the way that he came and left the island is still hard to sum up.
Yeah.
So there's the fact that this guy's career followed this really strange path and basically touched every bit of this continent. It makes a lot of sense considering how it started and who started him on that journey. Because like I said before, once Mike Milbury gets his hands on you, you're in for a ride, my friend. And Olli Jokinen took that ride.
Oh, he took that ride in a very hostile way. right from the get-go. And fortunately for him, it only lasted 1 year, which you can't say for a lot for other people. But yeah, this was a crazy one. Thank you all for listening. Thank you again, David, for coming on and bringing us down this road with Olli Jokinen. This was a great pick. And we'll be back next week with our season finale live at Offside NYC. Thanks so much for listening, and we will talk to you again soon. And until then, keep the Islanders weird. Take care. Bye-bye.